We're gonna wait for a few more people and then we'll start today's lesson. We're gonna wait for a few more people, but if anyone has any questions from last week, now would be a good time to leave it in the chat and I'll answer. Okay, I think we'll start now, and if anyone joins later, we'll we can go back and explain it again. But for today's lesson, we'll be talking about the executive branch. That's the branch of the president and vice president. So we'll just dive right in. So first, we'll discuss the roles of the president and vice president, and then we'll talk about their formal and informal powers, and then we'll talk about how the president can control public policy, and then we'll finish it off with the advisors of the president. So first, presidential roles. So the president is commander-in-chief, which means they have power to control the U.S. troops. So here's Trump with the troops, and then Obama with the troops. So they're like the head of the troops of the U.S. So they can send troops to. So I think in October, Trump sent troops to Syria because he was commander-in-chief. And then we have diplomat-in-chief, so they can make foreign relations with other nations. That kind of rhymes, but um, so here's Trump making relations with Turkey, and then here's Obama making relations with India. Next, we have administrator-in-chief. So that basically means the president is in charge of the day-to-day operations in the executive branch. So here's George Bush. He's like um directing the executive branch around, and here's Obama doing the same. So they run the executive branch pretty much. Um, so for those who just joined, we just went over the presidential role. So we have them in commander in chief, meaning they have the power to control U.S. troops. Diplomat in chief, which means they have powers to make foreign relations, and then administrator in chief, which means they're in charge of the executive branch. So now we're on to vice presidential roles. So the vice president doesn't really do much, but they preside over the Senate. So when there's like a tie that needs a breaking vote, the vice president is brought in to break the tie. So here's Mike Pence in the Senate breaking the tie, and then Joe Biden in Senate breaking the tie. So Mike Pence is our vice president right now, and then Joe Biden was vice president under Obama. So, and then also they take over the presidency if like the president cannot finish their term, like they die or something. So it's basically the 25th Amendment. Um, Here is it in like the real words in the Constitution. And then here's like a little cartoon thing talking about how the vice president takes over for the president and stuff. So if the president gets like a serious illness or something, they can't finish their term, the vice president becomes the president. So now we go to formal versus informal powers. So a formal power, in basic terms, it's a power given directly to the president by the Constitution. So it's like stated in the Constitution. And then informal is it's not in the Constitution. It's more like implied. So that gives a lot of leeway. So formal powers include appointment power. So it's the power of the president to appoint federal judges, ambassadors, and department heads. So we have Barack Obama here. He's appointing a department head. I don't remember which one, but and if you remember in last week's lesson, the Senate has power to confirm or deny federal judge appointees. So when a president appoints a federal judge, ambassador, or department head, the Senate like votes on whether that person is. No, I think it's actually just federal judge, but the Senate votes on whether that person is fit for the job. They also have pardon power given to them by the Constitution, so they have the ability to pardon anyone of a federal crime. Recess appointments, so they're um, basically the appointment power, but during recess appointments, the president can appoint federal judges without Senate approval while they're like on recess. So when the Senate is not in session, the president can appoint federal judges and doesn't need any approval at all. So they can like get some controversial people in there without having them be denied or anything. And here we have a little table on how many recess appointments each president made. So you can see Reagan made the most at 233, 232 recess appointments. And then they can make treaties. So the president has the power to make official agreements with other nations and with Senate approval. So yeah. So this one needs Senate approval, but another informal power we'll see later doesn't need Senate approval. So that's used more frequently and it's more easily used. So an informal power is executive orders. So these can be issued by the president to order the executive branch and it has the same force as law. So it's basically a law without having to go through like the complex process of making the law like we saw last week in Congress. It takes like really long to make a law and this can just be done by the president in a short period of time. So it's used a lot. Here's Trump with an executive order. One of the more famous executive orders would be when um, when FDR used an executive order to put Japanese Americans and Japanese citizens in concentration camps after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I believe it's executive order number 9066 if anyone wants to research it later. I'll type it in chat. Executive number 906. Okay. And then we have executive agreements, is what I mentioned before. So the president can issue these to take care of routine matters with other countries, and it does not need Senate approval, which is a big deal since the Senate would not approve of some foreign relations that the president might want. And a famous one would be when George Bush issued an executive agreement with Mexico about a smart border between the US and Mexico. Here's Obama here making an executive order agreement. And then we have economic sanctions. So it's the denial of export, import, or financial resources with a country to try and change that country's policy. So um, I don't know when, but the U.S. they denied export and import of any of Libya's products because they're using like nuclear weapons. So they want to stop them. And then they have executive privilege, which is the right of privacy of conversation between the president and their advisors. So whenever the president speaks to their advisors, um, there's no need. The president has the power to keep that private, and the press cannot like leak the conversation or anything. So if you look at this little cartoon here, it's kind of like Trump blocking out the rest of the U.S. from his like private conversations. And now we have ways the president can control public policy. So public policy is basically like lawmaking and stuff, and like yeah. so they can use the media. So a famous use of the media by a president was when Kennedy had fireside talks. So he'd go on TV and he'd talk to the people of the United States to try and influence what they thought and like try to push policy onto them. Also, they can issue a State of the Union speech, which is when they gather all of Congress and they make a speech in front of them. So he can push his policy onto Congress and try to get them to make laws that he wants them to make. And then they have making policy proposals, which is basically the same thing as State of the Union speech, just that this is like more informal and he just makes a proposal and it's not like a whole speech. And then he can encourage Congress. So basically the same thing. And then we have the presidential advisors. So first we have the EOP. It's the group of agencies that supports the work of the president. So these agencies are part of the executive branch, and I believe there's 15 agencies that support what the president does. And then we have the White House staff. So it's the chief staff and aides that work near the president in the West Wing. And then we have the cabinet, which is made up of 15 cabinet secretaries and vice presidents. And I believe these 15 secretaries are like in charge of the agencies here, but I'm not too sure. I'll have to double check. So these are all of the people that help the president get policies made, and they like advise the president. So that's all we have for today. If anyone has any questions, they can type it in chat. And if you need to go back to any slides, sorry, I was talking a little quick the whole time, but if you need to go to any slides, I'll open up the slide thing. I'll also be posting this on Google Classroom if you need to reiterate. Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming. Yeah, you're welcome. The fireside chat, I said it was Kennedy earlier, but it's FDR. So I think it's on the radio and he just talked to everybody. Here, let me go to the slide. I think it was this one. Yeah. he just speak to the public and try to get everyone to support him and push his policy onto the public. So I don't think anyone has any more questions, so I'll end the meeting now. Bye guys.